Hello, everyone. This is Raise Your Voice as part of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Brett Rutherford, joined as always by my good friend and co host, Darby Robinson. We are live on youtube.com/ at Raise Your Voice. Still not live on X. We're working on that. Thanks a lot, Elon, for just constantly changing the rules. But if you're with us on YouTube, if you haven't already, make sure to like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications so that you can join us whenever we go live. We are also available wherever you get your podcasts. If you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, that's one of the best ways to spread what we do to more and more Rays fans. And if you really want to say thank you, you can head on over to patreon.com/raise your voice, where you can become a member for as little as $1 a month. And we are working on some exclusive perks for our members. Stay tuned for that. Darby, we didn't get the chance to go live yesterday on trade deadline day, which has kind of become a Raise Your Voice or a D-Rays Bay podcast tradition. In previous years, we've gone live like as the deadline has passed, and we've been able to react to some of those last minute deals. And yesterday was definitely a crazy day for trades. Unfortunately, I was in the middle of a big move. As you can see, it looks very similar, but this is a new space. And also had some crazy work events. I was thinking, and man, I wish I had thought of this earlier. We could have tried to rip off the Cespedes Family Barbecue game where one of them tries to stay away from, like, I could have, because it was having a hard time catching up with everything. I really could have tried to go like radio silent, and then you could have given me the trade news today.
Maybe next year, if one of us is moving or traveling. Yeah.
But first off, man, another trade deadline has come and gone, and the most active one, I think, ever in franchise history for the Rays. I don't even know the total number of trades made, but very active.
Very, very active. The Rays were one of the few teams that actually had, I think, like a big impactful deadline. I think there was a ton of moves this trade deadline, and a lot of them, I think there was a lot of sentiment for a lot of people was like pretty meh trade deadline overall, like not super exciting, not a lot of needles moved. And I think overall that's probably true. There was a lot of stuff happening, but it was a lot of like kind of marginal changes, a lot of marginal moves. Like, the Giants traded Jorge Soler, but then they traded for Mark Canha, which is like, all right. They traded Alex Cobb to the Guardians, but that's like a very minor. So there was a lot of that. But the Rays were one of the teams that, like, there is a humongous seismic change on the team. Although the last time we talked, we were in the process of processing two of the first early trades, right? Two of the bigger trades, the Randy Arozarena trade and the Zach Eflin trade at that time. Okay. So I'm like, it's hard to keep track of all the trades. And then they did even more action just before the trade deadline. So the actual deadline day ended up being not super crazy for the Rays. There's a couple moves we'll definitely talk about, but the whole trade deadline season, right? This was like, I feel like one of the most action-packed lead-ups weekend before trade deadline that I've seen in recent memory. Like there was people actually making moves and not going down to the last 30 minutes to go like, okay, fine, twist my arm. And it felt more like because it was kind of spread out. It almost felt like the Rays did the winter meetings this week. They really like it was the winter, because like every day there was like something happening. There was like a rumor and then a trade, but it was not like usually the trade deadline. It's that day in the morning and then kind of a gap in the middle of the day where people are kind of getting tight, and then a absolute torrent at the end. This was every day there was a new move. So yeah, very winter deadlines-esque trading deadline.
So I want to run through the list of every trade the Rays have made since the start of spring training, and obviously a bunch made in the last week. Greg Jones was traded to the Rockies for Joe Rock. who is pitching in Durham right now. You acquired Nico Goodrum from the Twins. Was that the part of the 3-team trade? No, that might have been a different trade. The 3-team trade was getting Ben Rortvedt from the Yankees, sending Shane Sasaki and Bert Smith to the Marlins. You shipped off Naoki Iwasawa to the Red Sox. Then in May, you acquired Richard Lovelady for Jeff Belge, a minor league pitcher. You got Lovelady from the Cubs. At the beginning of July, this was kind of the start. You shipped Aaron Savale off to Milwaukee in return for Gregory Barrios. A week later, you traded Phil Maton to the Mets. Then obviously we get the Arozarena and the Zach Eflin deals. Then you trade off all-star third baseman Isaac Paredes, as well as Jason Adam. A couple days ago, then Ahmed Rosario goes to the Dodgers. The Dodgers had a very interesting deadline, as they usually do, in exchange for Michael Flynn, a 27-year-old relief pitcher, just to be clear, the Michael Flynn that they acquired. Then they also traded Sean Armstrong to St. Louis in exchange for Dylan Carlson, an interesting deal that I definitely want to talk about, and Tyler Zuber to the Mets, another deal with the Mets in exchange for Paul Gervais. Let's go back to the biggest trade that we haven't discussed yet. Isaac Paredes, a guy whose name has been involved in trade discussions or at least trade rumors since this past offseason, right? And people were kind of freaking out. Are they really going to trade Paredes? Their best power hitter seemingly in the lineup at the time, a guy with 3 years of control. Well, they traded him with 2.5 years of control coming off of his first All-Star selection. But a very interesting return. And we'll start with the big league piece, the guy who has come in and made a great first impression.
3.5 years of control.
For
it's
Paredes?
even worse, 3.5 years control for Paredes, because Morel is 4.5 years. He's
super
so Morel is a free agent. Yes. So Morel is a free agent in 2029. Isaac Paredes is a free agent in 2028. So it's very close. They're the same age. But that's part of the part that makes it even interesting is he has moved way earlier than your normal, like getting ahead of free agency or kind of the back half, or even when it's getting too expensive art, really. So this was the rumors were eye-popping, like you said, like early on, because people were like, that's strange. This trade definitely took a lot of people by shock. The return being a major leaguer. This is the part where the trade, we were talking last show. The last show was, okay, Randy's traded, Eflin's traded. All of those guys are for single A pieces. Etzel is going to double A, but 2 years out, 2 years minimum out guys, like 2 to 3 years out. So like kind of we were talking about like discussing like, is this like a real true sell down? Like the Rays were saying they were going to try to do like some buying and selling, reshuffle the deck chairs, but still be like competitive somewhat for this year if things break well, and then still competitive next year and beyond. Like a Rays deadline cranked up to 11. But those first two trades, you're like, okay, these are all for single A guys. Like, okay, something's happening. This is the trade now where you get your big, like, that's the all-star that the Rays had this year. They traded their all-star, who's under control for a long time. But suddenly, this is not for single A talent. This is not for just a top 100 like pick. This is suddenly now like an immediate major leaguer, actually 2 immediate major leaguers. So this is, I want you to, what was going through your head when you heard or got the alert? I went to 2 movies this weekend. I went to see Twisters and I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine. Enjoyable times all around. I actually enjoyed Twisters more. I love it. I really enjoy a good summer flick like that. But both times I had come out to trade news. The first one was Jazz Chisholm to the Yankees, and then this one, the other one was Isaac Paredes traded. So every time I went to a movie, there was a trade when it came out. What was your reaction when you heard Isaac Paredes traded to the Cubs?
I was not shocked that Isaac Paredes was traded. I was shocked that it was to the Cubs, and I was shocked that they were so quick to move on from Christopher Morel, a player who I really like. The biggest knock on him, I know his batting average is low this year. I'm not too worried about that. Is his defensive home is a mystery if he has one. The defensive skills are not really there. However, I think the upside for the bat is so good, and he's still young enough to where he could develop into a position. So I was shocked that the Cubs were going after Paredes, a guy with one less year of control, a guy who is already in arbitration and is now an all-star. So is going to get very expensive very quickly for, like you said, 3 years left after this. And I was shocked. The Cubs are in a weird spot where they're struggling this year in their first year under Craig Counsell. I'm guessing, now they see Paredes as a piece, not a piece to build around, like he's a cornerstone player, but one of the pieces they're going to need to get back into the postseason. But I was really pumped about the return. Probably this one more than any of the others, which makes a lot of sense, right? Trading an all-star third baseman, 30-plus home run power. With
should get a good return.
Of control. It should get a good return. So the Rays get Christopher Morel, who has made a great first impression. First 2 games, 2 home runs. Hunter
home run every game.
Do we know the pronunciation? Biggie. Is it Biggie? Love that. Hunter Biggie.
It is Biggie.
Electric fastball slots right into, I think, like the A bullpen, especially if you're on the outside of the postseason. I'm not really worried about guys with experience at this point. Like, yes, we're trying to win ball games, but let's work some.
I think he slots right. You can slot him right into Jason Adams' spot, right? Definitely. Like electric flamethrower with plus secondaries. That's Hunter Biggie. Like the stuff plus numbers are absurd. He has amazing stuff. Command's a little bit of an issue. That was the same with Jason Adams when he came here. So I think that's the Rays look at that. They looked at with Pete Fairbanks as well. I think when the Rays again trade for relievers, it sometimes doesn't work out. Like Phil Maton. I'll admit I was very high on Phil Maton, but when the Rays are target relievers, you kind of take notice. And Biggie is interesting. He got into his action, also had a clean 1 inning of work. So in a blowout in his first chance. So
and you also get a 22-year-old pitcher who was in high A. Had good numbers. The strikeout numbers were good. The walks weren't too bad. I mean, through 6 starts, 8 appearances at high A, had a 28.4% strikeout rate to a 10.3% walk rate. So those numbers worsened a little bit coming up, getting promoted from A ball, and you get into high A and he's probably facing more guys closer to his age at 22. He's got I think that the stuff looks pretty good from what I've read. The fastball, he's a fastball, and then he's got a nice hard slider as well. I don't know if he's 6'6", so kind of like that out of a starting pitcher too. So interesting, another arm to get thrown in there. The trade, I think the pieces I'm more excited about now are obviously Morel and Biggie, but Ty Johnson, I think a nice throw-in piece there as well.
Getting that as your third piece. I mean, this is my favorite trade of the deadline. And I think the thing with Isaac Paredes that's fascinating. I think he's one of the most fascinating players in baseball because he has this one weird trick that baseball scouts hate. And it's a skill too, because I think that's the biggest thing is it all fluky that he's able to pull all these fly balls? But it is known that that is a skill set. And with his exceptional batting eye and vision and plate discipline, he is able to use that skill to be able to generate those fly balls. I think it's very clear that the Rays are not buying into that unicorn piece going forward. And especially not enough to keep paying a high price for that, especially when you can get a guy that they've also been linked to in the past. I think there were some even rumors with Tyler Glasnow being shopped to them a couple of times, actually. I think I heard Morel's name come up twice in Glasnow rumors a couple of years apart. So I think they've liked him for a while. Eric Neander said as much, in an interview. They've been kind of circling him. Christopher Morel and Isaac Paredes are like the weird, like bizarro world versions of each other. Isaac Paredes has some of the worst expected numbers, right? Expected batting average, expected slug. All of those are really, really poor. And all of his, StatCast sliders, all his baseball savant sliders are all in the blue because what he does, he doesn't hit the ball very hard. He doesn't hit the sweet spot a lot, but he's able to elevate and lift fly balls, all pull side, all going for home runs. So the production is there. The expected batting is not. Christopher Morel, on the other hand, is an expected batting darling. And his first two seasons, I will say, he had over 400 plate appearances, over 100 WRC plus both years. Last year, he was at 119 with a 347 WOBA, weighted on base average. So, like, really good hitter. Like, really, really good hitter. This year, it's all cratered. But if you look at all of his expected batting average, his expected batting average, his expected WOBA, and his expected slug are all crazy high. So he is still hitting the ball hard. He's actually chasing less. He's striking out less. He's walking more. Everything about his hitting is good, except for the results right now this year. So if you look at that, it just screams he's had success in the past. He's improved on every one of those hitting tools that you want to see. The results aren't there. Those are going to come. The results are coming because that's exactly the buy low.
This is a 30 home run guy. I mean, I think for the rest of his 20s, you can expect 30 home run. I mean, he's at 20, I think now. I think the one yet today was number 20.
Yeah, in a bad season, in a season where he's getting very unlucky, he's at 20 home runs with 2 home runs in his first 2 Rays games. And that first one was 420 feet, 105 off the bat, and inside and low. That was not a strike that he was able to get to elevate to near center field. Like that was
the bat speed is the most I think like special tool for Morel.
So Isaac Paredes that's one we talked about when way back. If you look back to one of our past episodes, which you should, just keep listening to them. Actually, turn it on and then just leave the room. Just we'll like the clicks. We talked about Isaac Paredes being kind of in that like Luis Arraez weird unicorn zone where like extremely long bat, which is not good, and very, very slow bat speed when we saw the bat tracking data, which is like that's bad. But he gets good results. So it's like he's able to keep the bat in the zone longer. Again, that profile is not good. Christopher Morel, on the other hand, the 7th fastest bat speed in all of Major League Baseball. It's extremely fast. So there is not a lot of tweaks that I would even do with Christopher Morel's bat. I think he's just a young guy who is very good. And right now he's just getting some bad results. But I would say keep it up. I think one thing that they could do and they might do is to really get him to start like hunting pitches more and try. He uses the whole field very well, but he is much more successful power-wise, like everybody, pulling the ball. Get him to start pulling the ball more. He's also getting out of and this is the biggest part that everybody was very confused with this trade. He's getting out of an extremely bad park when it comes to weather effects and a very rough left field wall, which crushes power of right-handed batters. You are taking Isaac Paredes, he only pulls. He never hits the other way. It's only pulled fly balls. And you are putting him in a place that, especially when the wind's blowing in, they'll never leave the park. Like never. And he already, in his expected home runs, if he played all at home, it was like 30 home runs. It was like 25 or 30 home runs less. It's huge. The only worst place in all of Major League Baseball is Baltimore with the new deep right left field wall.
Did you see that Paredes picked up his first hit today and it would have been a home run at the Trop?
I did. Only 5 parks, which coincidentally, I think 2 of those, Houston and New York, 2 of the teams that were most hunting him. Houston made so much sense. Houston getting
Crawford boxes, those would have been renamed the Paredes boxes.
He would have been a 50 home run guy. He would move over Judge, move over Mantle. Like he would have been just poking him out there. He would have been perfect. Yeah. Yankee Stadium, not too bad either. But yeah, to Chicago, now he can still be a great doubles guy. But you got to look at his 30 home run. Like, I don't know if he's getting that back. Now,
doubles ain't home runs.
Doubles ain't home run. And Cincinnati, though, he gets some stuff at the Great American Ballpark. That'll be good. But yeah, that's a huge. I don't understand why Chicago did this move, personally. I understand why the Rays did. I do not understand what Chicago did. Now, it greatly improves their defense. Like Isaac Paredes is a very good defensive third baseman. I think he is above average. And Chris Morel was very bad at third base. But that they traded again. Like Hunter Biggie is a piece. Like that's a guy that slots into a major league bullpen right away. And Ty Johnson is not a scrub prospect. That's a lot of prospect capital to get a guy, like you said, going to get more expensive with 1 year less of control, whose batting profile, a lot of people are questioning whether he can maintain that. I think he can, but even if he does maintain that, you put him in a place where he has to play half his games, that will suppress his power unless the wind is blowing out. And so you're really preying on the weather effects.
Paredes is unique enough and has had enough data where it feels like, okay, the way he's either just figured something out or it's just something about the game that we don't understand yet. And like the bat speed data we're getting, the Rays probably have a bunch of other different metrics. Isaac Paredes was like on Rates and Barrels from The Athletic. Like they loved talking about Isaac, or they still do, love talking about Isaac Paredes and the different swing paths that he has. And he has 3 distinct different swings for, no strikes, 1 strike, 2 strikes. And I think like he is a good hitter. Like this is not a fluke. However, does that translate to Chicago to merit what they sent back to the Rays? Like, to me, and I don't blame the Rays for taking this deal, but man, it feels like someone else like would have pushed a little harder for an Isaac Paredes. But I'm really happy with the return. I want to touch on 2 more things about this trade. The first one, 2025 opening day, Christopher Morel, what position is he in? Are you going to cop out and say DH?
No, I'm really debating. I think I'm going to say right field. I'm going to say right field. Gets a full off season to practice out there. He has a elite level arm.
Yeah,
his arm grades out as one of the best. So that's why I say right field instead of left field. Josh Lowe is a very accurate arm. It's decent. It's not great. In left field, I think Josh Lowe can actually nail a lot of people. I think that actually is maybe the better switch. His best defensive position is where he started with the Rays, which is at second in his first game. But I think I'm going to go and say right field opening day 2025.
Where's Josh Lowe?
Left field.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Series and center. I think the outfield is pretty much set for starting. I think Josh Lowe's his range, his speed works, and I think he's very accurate arm. So I think that's really good. I think Morel in right field, you want a cannon. And
this question is very dependent on who is on the team next year, obviously.
It is very dependent. I have a couple of backup reasons why I'm going to say right field.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, let's hear it.
So okay, the biggest. So I think this kind of transitions into a big part of the deadline, which was Yandy Diaz, Pete Fairbanks, and Brandon Lau did not get traded. This is not. I think a lot of people went into this deadline as this was a tear down. The Rays are tearing it down to the studs. It's a fire sale. But then the Isaac Paredes trade comes around. And when you look at the trades they did, and we will do it, let's do it. We'll do a full recap after this. But like every move has a direct corresponding move.
Yeah.
They basically had a 1-to-1. We talked about it with Zach Eflin. Gets traded. Jeffrey Springs is added into his exact part in the rotation. And that's like next year, that is the spot. Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz had the most questionable, like who goes into those spots right away. It's very tricky. I think in this situation, like I think Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz are kept, which is really fun for this year because it means that they're not like completely punting on this year. They're going to have their options picked up, but will they still be on the team next year? I think one of them might be. And I think that one might be Brandon Lau. I think it's going to be Brandon Lau, and not Yandy. But if it's not, if they trade both Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz, I still think you could have a second base platoon of Aranda and Mead and be pretty happy. And Morel starts in right field with more time to really learn the trop and the roof and that stuff. I know they didn't put him out there right away because this is a very difficult dome. And if he's only played, I think, here this past series this year with the Cubs. I don't know if he played in the last year before that. So I think they're going to give him time. So that's my take, is that Brandon Lau is going to start at second base. But if he does get traded, I still think there's a platoon that they might just put there instead.
Yeah, and Morel, like, if his strongest defensive talent is his arm, you're kind of hiding that at second base. Like, you want to, okay, what can you do good? Let's try to emphasize that.
That's why they put him at third. That's why they put him at third, because that's where you need an arm. But he's not.
Curtis Mead does not have an arm at all. So,
but he's got a better glove than Mead or Morel in that situation. Right. So yeah, I agree with you. Put him in right field. Let the cannon just unleash it.
Yeah. Luke asked the $1 million question: who's the starting shortstop? I mean, I don't know. I think probably Caballero. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I hope it's not Taylor Walls.
No, I hope not.
I think Caballero next year. I mean, Carson Williams isn't ready. It's not going to be Wander Franco.
It is a great question, Luke.
I think it's Caballero. I think it's Caballero.
Caballero and Basabe. What about that? What about that platoon?
Basabe's back and doing really well in Durham. We'll get to one more quick question, then we'll get through the rest of the trades. Tyler asks, Rays go after a big name this offseason. They've gotten rid of some money and Wander contract gone. Well, we don't know for sure that the Wander contract will be gone.
Yeah. There's still some legal potential, but it's looking better. It is looking better.
Will the Rays? I mean, I think they're going to make an offer for Juan Soto.
Yeah.
They'll
put a number like a 10-year, $300 million.
Yeah.
They will throw an Aaron Judge like offer to make sure that if anybody's getting cold feet, he's got that, but he's not going to accept that. I have not looked at like who would be available at shortstop. I don't think it's going to be a good list. Nobody was traded at the deadline that was at shortstop that would have helped. Like Paul DeYoung, I think, was traded, and he's not good. He's fine. It was a good pickup for KC, but like he's a backup right at this point. I don't know. Like, and catcher, there's really no catchers. So
yeah, the biggest names like Blake Snell, they're not going to go get Blake Snell. Teoscar Hernandez, I don't think.
You could. I mean, they do like Teoscar, but after this season, I think he's earned like a.
They just traded Randy Arozarena. I mean,
they just traded Teoscar. Yeah, I don't think you want to do 3-year deal of Teoscar.
Charlie Morton's going to be 41. Alex Bregman probably not a fit. Pete Alonso, no.
Pete Alonso is an interesting one.
Short deal on game. Like
short deal. He's a little older, going home to Tampa. If you trade Yandy, you need another righty bat. Christian Walker, I think, is also a free agent. I think Christian Walker and Pete Alonso are two guys who, depending upon their market, I think could be available. I think in free agency, those are guys that are probably going to get like a 4-year deal. Like Jose Abreu got the 3-year deal, and I hated that deal right off the bat. And that was a bad deal. So I don't want to necessarily sign a first baseman on the wrong side of 30 to a multi-year deal, but like a 2-year deal or less, I'm in.
Yeah, I agree. One more quick question from Tyler. When will Junior be called up? I'm really starting to think it will be some point in September for a couple weeks. And if the Rays are in the postseason, could probably would be on the postseason roster.
Yeah.
But given the moves they've made and moves they didn't make, they traded Paredes, but they brought in Morel, and then they kept Lau and Diaz. I'm really starting to think they want Junior to have his rookie eligibility in 2025. And Jackson Holliday's back up, and he might be out of the Rookie of the Year race for next year.
He will. If he stays up the rest of the year, he will be out of it. So napkin math I've been doing this. So I was really looking into this. So basically, Junior Caminero, he came up last year for about 9 days. The rookie rules are you cannot be up for more than 45 days or exceed what is it? It's 150 plate appearances. So what happened was Caminero had 9 days on the roster. He had 120 at bats. He had 36 at bats and he was 9 days on the roster, which means 36 days and about 94 at bats is what he needs to stay under. Napkin math wise, all of September would be about 75 at bats and about 30 days. So you're looking at basically a week before September, 6 days before September. Let's say August.
And you get you do get the extra roster spot. They might just wait till September.
I think at this point, what you're looking at is you are a couple of weeks away. You're basically about 3 weeks away from you're about like 4 weeks away. You can call him up now. And if you think like he is ready to like improve this offense right now, start him at third, right? The slot is open now. And that was the big thing with Paredes or Yandy kind of had to be traded to open a spot or Lau to open a spot for where Caminero is going to go. Third base is a natural spot. It's where he's been playing in the minors in Durham mostly. That would be, I think, where he comes up. I would say not before August 25th.
And his defensive skill set is best for third base at this point. He's got a decent arm. The footwork, from what I've seen, isn't like great. So second base, a lot trickier, getting to double plays and base coverages and the different things. Third base, you kind of just stand there and knock down ground balls.
He had a great play the other day. He had a really good catch the other day at third. So
I don't think he's going to be he's not like, I'm worried about like Curtis Mead's defense and Jonathan Aranda's defense. I'm not worried about Junior Caminero's defense. I don't think he's going to be a Gold Glove winner, but he'll be up in due time. Let's move on to another trade. Jason Adam, not too surprising that he was moved, gets shipped to San Diego. The return for this one to get former first-round pick Dylan Lesko, who I know has had his fair share of issues. He slots in immediately on MLB.com as the Rays' number 5 prospect, right behind Braden Taylor. So, I mean, you think of the Rays' top prospects right now, it's obviously Caminero, Williams, Isaac, and then maybe the start of that second tier is Braden Taylor, and he's right up there with him. Now, the Rays have traded for 20-year-old pitchers from the Padres before. It hasn't quite worked out. However, Lesko is still so young, and he still hasn't pitched above high A.
Yes.
They have a lot more time with him. They can really slow play this, having him in their system with their coaches, working in their development labs to try to bring him back to where he was, because he's made 16 starts this year at high A. He's got a 6.46 ERA and a 16.5% walk rate, and he's only striking out 25% of hitters. Now, I know he's had he's coming off of is it Tommy John or was it another surgery?
It was another surgery, but
he's coming off an arm surgery though.
Yeah.
Which
is never it.
Yeah, I mean, but
it's also right? It's also, if you're pitching, you're gonna get arm, elbow, forearm. You're going under the knife.
Yeah. So he had surgery, I think, before the draft or before he was drafted. So like he missed his senior season. So, but he had some other injury. He was coming back this year. But Lesko, 20 years old, was a first-round pick in 2022, taken 15th overall out of Buford High School, 6'2", 195. Really nice curveball. Also uses a changeup a lot. And man, I mean, like this is to turn a one-inning reliever into a starting pitching prospect of this caliber. Sorry, I think that's really impressive. And you also got a catcher, JD Gonzalez.
Also great. Yeah.
And you got Homer Bush Jr. So I think we can make really great use of the Homer Simpson, like going into the bush GIF. with a player, Homer Bush Jr.
Yeah.
43 stolen bases on the year in high A for Homer Bush Jr. He is an 80 grade speed. To have him and Chandler Simpson, right? We've got Homer Bush Jr. and Chandler Simpson, both stealing a ton of bags.
Homer Simpson on the bases.
Yeah,
like 200 stolen bases.
If they're on the same team at any point in the minors or when they get up to the majors, the social media teams are going to have a field day with that because they're both pretty similar players. And then you get JD Gonzalez, a catcher who I've heard the Rays have liked for a while. He's young. Good. He's in his first full year of pro ball. And there's not really much else I could say about a catcher who's 18. Like, we don't know.
He's really. long way away. Catchers to take a long time to develop, but the reports out are like really exciting. Like one of the best catchers at that age that a lot of scouts have been liking. Somebody that's going to stick at catcher, it seems, and has some actual pop in that bat. So somebody that will check in like 4 years, see how he's developed. But really, I mean, Jason Adam, a guy who the Cubs DFA'd, that the Rays were able to basically pick up for free. Turn his career around. He talked about it.
We had Peter Bendix on the show, and Danny and I got a chance to talk to him, and Danny was like almost making fun of Bendix, like for that being the first move that happened after he became GM was acquiring some reliever off the scrap heap in Jason Adam, and look what it turned into. I mean,
look at incredible. That. Yeah. No, I mean, and Jason Adam, like like very, very good career with the Rays. Probably the best reliever they had this year too. One of the best relievers moving on the market, but like that return is great. I mean, you talked about Lesko's flaws. The Padres are one of the most gifted teams at finding talent. They're one of the most disastrously bad pitching development teams I've ever seen. Like I hate the way they just ruin pitchers in their
Luis Patino.
Yeah, Luis Patino is a big one. Mackenzie Gore was his career was starting to like struggle a bit, and then the Nats have been able to bring him back. So getting Lesko at 20 in single A, like get him out early, get him into the Rays pitching lab. That's a good thing. Same with Robbie Snelling. That's another guy that speaking of Peter Bendix, the Marlins were able to get for Tanner Scott, another reliever. Robbie Snelling was a top 100 guy, same as Lesko. They both have fallen out of the top 100 because they've struggled. They've struggled because the Padres pitching development is trash. And so you say, okay, you're at single A. Throw it all out. Throw it all out. Let's get back to we are basically drafting you. Let's get to work. So I love the move. I mean, Bush, the catcher, JDD. This is just a really good trade. Lesko is the premier piece. He has got a lot of arm talent, and I think this is going to be a great for his career. If he's going to be at anything, if he is going to develop into a major leaguer, it will be here. So this is, I think, the best chance for him to get there.
My prediction is that by the midseason updates next year, he'll be a consensus top 100 guy again. I mean, he'll be 21 at this time. He'll be 21 at this time next year. They're like still so young.
Plenty of room.
And I think
so. It was TJ. It was TJ.
Okay. Yeah. Right before the draft.
So
I think he missed most of his senior season, if not all of it. So, I mean, at that point, let's talk about a couple of the trades that didn't happen, right? At that point, I'm thinking, well, Pete Fairbanks is a goner. If this is the going rate for relievers, and
then when the Astros traded 3 of their top 10, which to be fair, I will say to that, people were saying like the Astros traded Joey Loperfido and
their farm system stinks.
But like, they traded their 2, their 4, and their 8. But like that's the worst farm system in like all of baseball. So it's like that's like if the Rays traded like like their 20th, 25th, and like just off like that. Yeah. So I will say that's like a little bit like 3 top 10s. It's like whatever, not really. But still, that's a lot for Kikuchi, who I think has a lot of good stuff, and I think he's an interesting pitcher. Once they did that trade, there was really nothing left for them to make the trade for Yandy. Like there's nothing left that they could offer that I think
Right.
could really interest the Rays. Besides their one top 100 guy who I don't even love that much. Like it, I
Now,
think what was interesting is when you saw the Kikuchi trade and you saw the Tanner Scott and the Jason Ham trade. Yeah, you're like, you know what? I love you, Pete. I love you, Zach. Like, good luck on your future endeavors.
as
You're
much as I
gone.
did, as much as I did not want to send any of because like it was nerve wracking for me. Like I try to come out this very level headed. But Brandon Lau, Yanni Diaz, and Pete Fairbanks are like my three favorite Rays right now. Yanni Diaz has been for a while. Brandon Lau and like Pete Fairbanks, I think has become, one of the most liked players in all of baseball with his
One of my favorite
interviews.
people in
Yeah,
baseball. Yeah.
exactly. And he had his bobblehead day was on Sunday, and there were
It was,
reports that the Rays and the Yankees were close on a deal
oh
the
yeah.
day
Who's
before
that?
his
Who is
bobblehead
that
day.
reporter? Who is that reporter?
Randy
That
something, Randy
chuckle-headed
Mills.
loser. Yeah. What a loser. What a
But
loser.
what I
What
started
a
to be afraid of
that was
was
this.
that the Rays and Yankees did have the framework of a deal
Mhm.
for Pete Fairbanks, and that this guy got wind of it, started a report on it, and that the Rays really wanted to hold off until like Monday to get through the
Yeah.
bobblehead day because it was more than just a bobblehead day. It was for his foundation for the child that him and his wife lost, and it was going to be such a big emotional day for him, and he's become such a big part of like the Rays in the community, and it just felt like that couldn't be the timing of a trade. But my fear was that the framework was in place and they were going to wait till Monday or Tuesday to pull the trigger. And as much as I didn't want to see any of my three favorite players head to the Yankees, if there was one proverbial prospect cabinet that I really wanted to raid, I think it was the Yankee system. And for what they could have gotten in return, based on what the market was doing for players like Fairbanks and Diaz, I think you could have got a king's ransom out of them.
You could have, but I'm really happy to see that they didn't. Once they traded, so we should talk about this. This is at the end of the day. We talked about this with like the first trades and like going to the deadline. Like I don't know if it was off the air or on the air now, but I was like I was kind of nervous to be like, are we really just gonna tank it all? Are we just gonna take not tank it, but like, is this a reset of more than 1 year?
Yeah.
And that didn't make sense.
It
But
hasn't
like,
felt that way for like after the first few trades, I was starting to think that, and I was excited by the returns, but I'm like, it's been a while since we've sat down to watch Rays games and thought, well, the season's
there's
over.
nothing. Yeah, there's no like we're not playing for anything. Yeah, it's
And
been a very long time.
it's been even longer since they've done like a traditional like fire sale. And I don't know if they've
Yeah.
ever really done a fire sale, not like the likes of like
No.
the Marlins who do one every 3 years, or like the White Sox. They're on a cycle.
And
The Rays have
they
never done
had
that
like
really.
and even in the off seasons when they've done like big trades and everyone's like, oh my God, the Rays are tanking and they're the worst for baseball. The last time, and I was looking through this because there were some articles out about the Rays and like the morality of what they're doing and just, whatever, jerking off out there. Uh, all of that stuff, that was all just silly. Like I was looking back to an article I wrote in 2019 about like, and I had all of these headlines that were basically about like, like like moral, just like bleeding, crazy, absurd, like hyperbolic. Like the Rays are a disgrace. The Rays think they can compete, and that's cute. The Rays are like the Hitler of baseball, or like just like really crazy stuff. That year they won
2018 was
90
really
games.
bad. Going,
Like they
yeah,
won 90 games. Like so, it's like, and the people they traded were like,
Corey.
Evan Longoria, who's old, Corey Dickerson, Steven Souza. Like I was like, Jay Gudarizzi. Like that's the fire sale. So like this season, there was like the potential chance for like a true like, holy moly! Like if you trade Jason Adam, Pete Fairbanks, Zach Eflin, Randy Rosarena, Isaac Paredes, Yandy Diaz, and Brandon Lau, that's a core. Like that's like a build around core, and that is the core of the last kind of window from about 2019 on. But and I was like a little nervous. I was like this, I would be riding with and seeing like where it all came out. But now as the dust settled and you look at what happened, you look at like, oh, okay, what they did was this was a seller's market. They looked at this team as developed right here, and I think they saw like 3.5 games back, but with many teams ahead of them. This is not like the likelihood of the postseason is so high, and you have to really pick like, do you make some modest trades where you go, let's do some small additions, like maybe trade a little bit and get like Eric Fetty, right? Or like let's do like, ooh, like, maybe we'll get a Tommy Edman, like these tiny, like, okay, that'll help our shortstop position a little bit, and then, oh, we have another extra pitcher here, and that's like, would that really get them over the top? Or do you say, okay, we need to move like a top 100 guy and get like, Blake Snell in here? Would that put him over the top? Or do you go like, this market is for selling? We need to do a reshuffle and reset. This window has not been producing the last couple of years. It's been a good regular season, but the offense, that's 2 years out of 3 where the offense has been kind of subpar, or at least subpar for competitive standards. And in the postseason, the offense has not shown up. It's small sample size stuff, but I can understand Erik Neander looking at this and saying, is this the core for the next 2 years that we really want to roll with? Or is this the opportunity in a prime seller's market to do that reset? I think Danny said something like, is this a 5-year rebuild that they did in 1 week? And with keeping these players, they were able to basically say, we're going to basically have the same team, maybe definitely a little reduced, but like not emptied out, and see where the chips fall the second half of this season, but still be ready to go in 2025 opening day with a very competitive playoff competing team.
Yeah. I think overall I'm happy with the deadline, and we'll still cover the last couple moves. Those were the big ones, though, and then Luke's given us some Latin here, which I enjoy. Thank you for always being on.
We're elevating the show with class.
Yes, we definitely are. Yeah, I mean, again, we heard buy sell like a couple weeks going into the deadline, and then it turned into more of a like, yes, it's, if you consider selling, trading major league pieces for minor league pieces, that's pretty much what the Rays did, with the exception of the Paredes trade, which is just a unique trade. It doesn't happen that often in baseball, like 2 young players that appear to be really good with lots of control traded for each other. That doesn't happen all that often. I think that trade specifically, it has a lot more chance to blow up in a bad way for the Cubs than it does the Rays, when you kind of get 3 bites at the apple with 3 separate players. Ahmed Rosario, we knew he was going to be traded, signed for a super cheap 1-year contract right during spring training. He gets shipped to the Dodgers, which is where he was traded like last year.
Yeah. This is the trade. This is the type of trade right here. This is why, as much as as some writers want to say like the Rays way is cruel and the players, it's awful on the players and whatnot, this is why the players tend to speak very highly of the Rays organization. Ahmed Rosario takes this cheap deal. He gets playing time. He's put in a good role. He is a contributor this year. And when the time has come where the Rays are like, they're kind of on the fringe. They may make the postseason, they may not. But like, this is sending Rosario to a team that's going to make the postseason, that's going to compete for the World Series for sure. They always compete for the World Series. It's a familiar situation for him. This is doing right by a veteran player that will encourage other veteran players to be like, oh, cool. If I need like a 1-year cheap deal, I get to, like, there's worse places to go. They're going to treat me well. They're going to be honest about my role. And if it comes time, like it's not working out, they're going to give me a good landing, a soft landing spot. And I think that really has a lot of value beyond the return. Although the return kind of nice, kind of fun, kind of quirky.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Rays, they like identifying and acquiring relievers at this stage of their development. Mid to late 20s, have played, in the minor leagues for a few years, specifically as a reliever. They don't develop like it's most guys that are drafted like want to be a starter. There's very few guys that you draft purely to be relievers. They kind of just start to identify themselves early on. But the Rays, like we've seen them get Manuel Rodriguez. And you talk about Jason Adam, who they got after he DFA'd and hadn't had much success in the big leagues. Michael Flynn, 36 in the third innings this year, has a 4.95.
Not disgraced Secretary General.
That's true. 4.95 ERA, has had a little bit of trouble with the home run ball at AAA this year in the Dodgers organization, but 32.1% strikeout rate, a walk rate under 10%. Those seem like good numbers. Like again, Ahmed Rosario was not going to be playing another year with the Rays. At this point, the Rays have to look at it like if the Rays were in the top wild card spot, you probably keep him because you want that veteran, versatile player in your clubhouse and in your lineup against lefties in postseason games. But right now, even though I'm looking at the comments and we threw Tyler's up there that yes, the Rays could very well make the postseason with this team. I don't think it's likely, but they have to operate under the assumption that the guys on expiring contracts we're not going to be here next year and weren't going to help you win playoff games this year. Another guy on an expiring contract, Sean Armstrong, sent to the St. Louis Cardinals for Dylan Carlson.
What a fun, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he was former top 100 prospect, right?
Yeah, he was like fifth, I think, overall, something, or maybe at one point he was top 10 at one point. And at one point, I think I saw one list where he was like 12th, and he was just surrounded by insane, like just like a who's who of names. It has not gone well the last couple of years. He had a kind of a breakout year, somewhat of a breakout year in 2021. There was a lot of talk from the Cardinals that he was like kind of the centerpiece of a potential Juan Soto trade.
Yeah.
But they balked at that, including Carlson. And a couple of years later, he is like this year is like cratering out. Like it's been a downward spiral at the plate and a little bit in the field too. This year he's bad at everywhere. It's been a mess. But we've also seen this little song and dance, as Tyler's pointed out, with the Cardinals. The best day of a Cardinals outfielder's life is when they leave the Cardinals. Just ask Adolis Garcia, Randy Arozarena, Tyler O'Neill, Tommy Pham,
who's back and looks like he's having a good time now. But
4 months in Chicago on the south side will do that to you, right? That'll do that to a man. He hit a grand slam in his first game. That's pretty awesome. That was pretty cool. Always will root for old Tommy Pham. But that's a long list of outfielders who really have done well and like taken their game to another level after being either traded with like as a piece or given up on in like kind of Adolis Garcia and Tyler O'Neill's case. Like they were kind of like at the end of their lines. And Dylan Carlson, is he going to be the next Arozarena? I don't think so. I actually am not very high on Dylan Carlson myself, but like it's for Sean Armstrong, like
right,
a good pitcher. But like he was not even at this point. He was starting to like lose really leverage spots to Edwin Uceda, expiring contract. I understand why the Cardinals did it. There was really no space for Dylan Carlson. But
they were going to DFA him, is my understanding.
Yeah, and the Rays were probably going to. I could have seen them even DFAing Armstrong just to give some other guys some options down the stretch too. Maybe not, but he was in that potential camp. It's an interesting like swap. Carlson has some service time control. He also has options, which is interesting, minor league options. I think it's like. I think there was a market enough for Armstrong who can go multiple innings that I think they had a couple choices out there. And it's a little interesting they chose Carlson. He is somebody who is a couple of years removed from being a top 10 like overall prospect who has one very outstanding season like in the books. So he's not without talent. What was your thoughts on this deal? because this was like the last trade that came through, besides the JD Davis trade that never
That never happened.
it never happened. He wasn't traded, and it wasn't to the Rays, but John Heyman's phone blew up or something. But the last sort of trade was Armstrong for Carlson. So what are your thoughts on this?
I was expecting like a pitcher in low A, like a 20-year-old that has like tons of command issues and is probably a reliever, but we're gonna just take him anyways.
16 Ks per 9, but also like 20 walks per 9.
Yeah.
Just like no idea where it's going, but
instead, you with plenty of space on your 40-man, you get a switch hitting outfielder that's in. He's 25. He's in his age 25 or 26 season.
Still very young. He's actually it's shockingly young.
But he's played 5 years. This is his 5th year on the big league team. He was playing pretty regularly in the COVID shortened season in 2020, and he's only been back to the minors to rehab injuries since then. And like you said, it's kind of gotten worse each year. He went from, I think, someone who was a 2.5 win player in his first full season. And I mean, it's just gone really bad. He's got no home runs this year in 138 plate appearances. He's striking out more than he ever has. Just running. He's hitting for no power, and he's not good defensively either. He's not a standout defensively. The fit is weird. However, I mean, why not? And he's got 2 years left of control. You can easily non-tender him if it just doesn't work out, and you don't want him back.
The Rays have had some. They have a little depth issue with the outfield too. So like, it's not a bad option. It's and I posted the meme. The record player does not work, but could be fun to fix. That is Dylan Carlson to a T, right? Like that he's 25. Like you said, he's 25. He's so young. He's the same age as Isaac Paredes and Christopher Morel. Like there's talent there. He is a prime like change of scenery place. Like he needs to go somewhere else. Hopefully a new change of scenery, a new idea. Just like maybe also there is something to the idea that like you are the top prospect with all of this hype. He had like Bryce Harper hype with the Cardinals. Like there was people talking him up like really crazy high levels. And so that is a lot to live up to. And most people don't live up to the hype of that. And he didn't with the Cardinals. But he's with the Rays now. So that hype is gone. No, people have no expectations. Nobody's coming in saying like, "Ooh, Dylan Carlson, he's going to be the next, Bryce Harper." Like, no, he's 25. What he does next, who knows? But it's now for the first time, like he doesn't have the baggage necessarily of the Cardinals' pressure of him being like kind of the next big center field thing for them. It's a very interesting. I mean, like Dylan Carlson's one of the reasons why they traded Randy Arozarena and DFA'd Adolis Garcia. Like that is the fact. Like he was a person that was blocking these other outfield options, and now the Rays have traded for him. So it's interesting. It's an interesting move. I don't expect much from it. I will say I think he's walked a lot in the minors or in the majors, not even in the minors. I'm even looking at his minors numbers because he said he's been in the majors for like 5 years. So he has a lot of like major league experience. He does have a good eye for the zone. He has some pop, strikes out too much. It's a blank slate. Honestly, it's a blank slate with him. So
it's a blank slate, but I wonder if he's not going to get the runway for what's left of this season for the Rays to draw any conclusion, and then they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not to tender him a contract for next year. I have no idea what he would get an R, maybe like $3 or $4 million. I think he's on like.
It's kind of like when the Rays sign, like the Rays will oftentimes sign like a Dylan Carlson type in spring. They make the team, and then they have like the first like month. It's kind of like with Harold Ramirez, it's very different players, but like it's kind of like Harold Ramirez. He was kind of DFA. He was kind of leaving the Cubs, and you go, yeah, let's see it. Let's see a shot. Let's give him some run, and he took off, and you go, okay, cool, and he sticks around. that's Carlson. I agree. Like, I think they might just give him some run because, I mean, well, Richie Palacios had a knee injury today, so maybe he's out a little bit. We'll see. I'll be curious to see. I mean, it's we are at a part in the season where it's like, why not? Give it a shot.
Yeah. And if you look at like AAA, the outfielders, Cameron Meisner, who I'd like to see at least get a shot at some point. Heriberto Hernandez actually back down to Double-A. Tristan Peters, Jake Mangum. I mean, yeah, Tristan Peters. Maybe there's something there, but like it's not like there's anybody knocking on the door who Dylan Carlson is like taking their spot away. And again, like this could very well end with a non-tender in a couple months. And Dylan Carlson
Probably
looks for his next home, but maybe it work. It's so low risk though that like why not? And you're trading the salary like for like with him and Armstrong for the remainder of this year.
Totally.
And even though like we're not going to go too on about the argument about what is this payroll driven, although we're going to talk about it in a second. I mean, you're not worried about it. You cut a lot of other payroll this deadline. Last trade we'll hit on real quick because we do have one other thing we have to talk about. We're already over an hour. Tyler Zuber, who like we just got grand opening, grand closing, traded to the New York Mets for Paul Gervais. And this was one of the trades that, like I said, we could have pulled off you giving me the news. I completely missed this one and realized today that we got Paul Gervais in this trade. Paul Gervais, former Wake Tech Community College Eagle, that's the school I work at here in Raleigh and in Wake County, pitched here in 2020 for the Eagles. We're an NJCAA school, JUCO. Then pitched at another JUCO, ended up getting to LSU. So, turned into a really, talented arm. He was when he got here, and it was just needed to craft some things. It was obviously well before I got here to Wake Tech, but really cool to see the Rays trade for a player that used to pitch at my school. Like last year they did this when they got Jack Hartman from the Pirates in the G-Man Choi trade. He used to pitch at my old job at Tallahassee Community College. So pretty cool now that both of these guys are in the system. And so I'll be rooting for Paul Gervais. I can't really tell you much more about it.
We were looking into the numbers. He's huge. He's very tall.
Yeah, big.
But with like a low arm slot. He kind of throws like almost like Phil Maton's arm slot, which is wide from like 6'10". The strikeout numbers are absurd in the minors. Like the command is an issue. Like again, whatever. Obviously, like if you had command, you would not be traded for Tyler Zuber. Like that's the thing. Like you're putting up like 15K per night. Obviously, there's going to be warts on the record. Otherwise, you're like being traded like Jason Adam, like at the major league level. It's a very odd trade. The Mets love the Rays relievers, and the Rays love the people the Mets are giving up. And that's like not a great street to be on, where the Rays are ready to give up on a reliever and they want your piece, and you're like, yes. That's usually not great because Jake Diekman now just got DFA'd, so he's available if you want him to. But yeah, Gervais is like a pretty interesting arm. Like with Gervais and Flynn, those are two of those pieces that they traded their expiring contracts for. Really fun relief arms, that are near major league that we'll probably see at some point this year get some run. So the Rays have done a couple of moves like that, picking up some like quirky relievers to like reshape the pen. So I like it. It's an interesting move. It's not bad.
Yeah, I want to run through where the new prospects slot in on the top 30 on MLB.com.
Yeah.
Dylan Lesko comes in at number 5. Brody Hopkins, who was the right-handed pitcher in the Rosarena deal, he slots in at 7. Aiden Smith, another guy from the Rosarena trade, number 13. Jackson Baumeister from Baltimore, that was the Zach Eflin deal, comes in number 14. Mac Horvath, another one in that Eflin trade, number 19. Homer Bush, number 20. And Gregory Barrios, coming back to the Savali trade, is number 25. JD Gonzalez, number 28. Matthew Etzel, number 29. This is like exactly what this farm system needed. This farm system was very top heavy. The depth was a little thin. It wasn't bad, right? The Rays haven't had a bad farm system in a long, long time. It was just getting a little thin. I think it badly needed a restock like this.
That's the part of this deadline that's very exciting. Is you were looking at, we've talked about this, like Randy Arozarena had 2.5 years of control. You were not going to keep him past those 2.5 years. So you're questioning, like, okay, these next two, do you keep them? Is this window, when does this window start to close a little bit? When do you need to prop it back open? Zach Eflin, $18 million next year. I don't even know if Baltimore's picking up that. Jason Adam, relievers, can never really fault trading a reliever. Isaac Paredes, that's definitely that's a trade that they're just interested in doing because that's swapping like for like. And then expiring contracts. So overall, when you're looking at all of these moves, these big, like, okay, this is a huge sell-off. You really look at it, and it's like, it's definitely an impact to this current year, but it doesn't extend into next year. Besides Randy, that's the only trade that you look at and you go, that is the question mark of, like, should you have kept him for this year? Should you keep him next year? Do you trade him in the offseason? Do you trade him next offseason? All of that sort of stuff. So I do think this is a really interesting offseason. And if you are looking at this as a like this window, if you're being really honest with this window and you're saying, I don't know if this year or next year is the World Series roster, and I don't know if we have the pieces, with Wander screwing everything up, you are missing a 5 to 10 WAR player at a key position that would have been here this year and next year. I think you're saying, like, that window might have actually closed. Mm-hmm. And you saw the first 4 months of this season, and you're like, we had Randy and Paredes and Yandy, and then eventually Lau and Lowe, and you're like, the offense was sporadic, not great. You saw it 2 years ago. You might be like, you know what? I just don't know if this is it. And that's a tough decision. It's a very, very tough decision, and it's not an easy decision at all. But I do think this is one of those deadlines that it really could be like a new era in Tampa Bay. Like, it could be a new kind of thing. They wildly upgraded the depth in that farm. They bolstered, I mean, like, you just listed off, 7 names added to the top 30, 2 in the top 10, 2 more, so 4 in the top 15 that was added to this, and a bunch of guys with helium, like Mac Horvath, Aiden Smith, Brody Hopkins. Like, those guys could be top 100 guys as well. Dylan Lesko, if he gets it
took
right,
the Orioles years to do this, and the Rays did it in one weekend.
They had years of just miserable bad thing. So this is a hard weekend for Rays fans. I get that. It is very stressful. You lose a lot of players that you love, that you have jerseys of. But it's avoiding those years of failure, those years where you don't have a farm, you're not good enough, and you need to maybe have some mediocre years, maybe even you tank a little bit. There's no harm in it. Apparently there's no punishment for it. But do you want that? Or do you want to make sure that every single year there is games in September that matter? Also, that happened on the trade deadline day. And we'll talk. We have so much more to talk about this. We'll save it for another episode. But the thing that we want to end on is just the stadium was confirmed that passed the last hurdle. We are now, as this fans of the Tampa Bay Rays who play in St. Pete, the slogan was here to stay. This vote ensures that they are indeed here to stay, and that there's shovels that are going into the ground apparently early in 2025 next year. And so in just a few months, there could be groundbreaking for a new stadium that will keep the Rays there for decades to come. Yeah. This deadline seemed to kind of reopen that window with a core, with some young talent, with a new face to get to know and love in Christopher Morel, with a new stadium on the horizon in 3 years, with talent that's coming up soon in Junior Caminero, and just behind them, guys like Carson and Xavier and maybe Dylan Lesko
Right.
and other names from here that might be, vying for the opening day roster in 2028. With to go with guys that you have right now, like Shane Boz and Taj Bradley and Ryan Pepio from other trades.
Yeah.
This feels, this deadline, the stadium news, it feels like the end of one era and just the very prelude, not the beginning. Maybe this is the end of the beginning. To borrow and paraphrase from Winston Churchill, it's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It's the end of the beginning.
Yeah, it does feel like we've always talked about separating parts of Rays baseball into chapters, right? And we're never really sure when one chapter ends and one begins. But this whole season, and part of it is the Wander Franco stuff, right? I mean, this is supposed to be a generational player. You lose him probably forever, and rightfully so.
And hopefully forever. I mean, to be honest, that's a dark cloud that the sooner that is fully put to bed would be better.
Yeah, new stadium, the city connects. I'm still wearing my skate right today. Like, there's been so much of this season that has felt. I'm going to say it. I know it's Danny's favorite word. It's a transition year.
Finally,
in so many ways,
we found it.
But I think it's a needed transition, right? Like, we call this a fire sale. It's like, I mean, the Rays have kept the core of this team together this is really going to be its third season with the core looking like it did. And they haven't won a playoff game. They only won one playoff game a year before that. I mean, it's not like this team was tearing it up. They won 99 games a year ago, but before that, it was 86. And so maybe we needed a little bit of transition where there are still, let me remind you, some key pieces to this core. Brandon Lau, Yandy Diaz, Josh Lowe, who's been up for a little bit now. Jeffrey Spring. Yeah, Jeffrey Spring, Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen have all been here since 2021. Like, they're going to be around. Pete Fairbanks. Like, there's still pieces of this core, but they, what did Eric Nander call it? A reallocation, right? We just shifted some things around. And you could say the lineup is worse today than it was 2 weeks ago, the roster. And I probably agree with you, but I think it's marginally worse. I mean, you're not suddenly the worst team in the division. I still, you're clearly better than Toronto. And I think the Rays, moving forward, are better than the Red Sox still. So, I mean, you're kind of in the same spot you were, but with some more promise for the future. I mean, yes, losing Randy, it does suck. I don't want to make it seem like we're just celebrating because we got some minor league guys. Like, it does suck, but it's something that A, I've gotten used to, so I expect it. And B, I mean, I'm just, like you said, a new guy to fall in love with, right? Christopher Morel, Hunter Biggie, who, we were getting reports from Lizzie that he was just all over the bullpen, couldn't sit still, was really excited. So it seems like maybe another really fun personality in the Rays bullpen. So, and Dylan
Christopher Morel, we had talked about being worried about Jose Siri because two of his best friends were Isaac Paredes, he had Randy, and then Ahmed Rosario. I mean, but here's the thing with Jose Siri, he'll make friends with everybody, and within I don't know 15 minutes of Christopher Morel being on the team, he has a home run in his second at bat, and first to greet him out of the dugout is Siri.
They have a handshake.
And then back to the end of the home run tunnel is Jose Siri. I don't know how he got there. He's very fast, I guess. He just raced the other end. And they had an elaborate handshake. He had an elaborate handshake within the first 24 hours of the guy being on the team. And then they were the ones with the Trisha post-game phone selfie.
Yeah.
So looks like Jose Siri is going to be okay. He's already got a good friend. And Christopher Morel he was already signing a ton of autographs. His very first game, he was there. The reports were he was there early after BP, was signing autographs for tons of people.
That's awesome.
All the reports out of Chicago are that Christopher Morel is just the most amazing person, fan guy, very, very like lovable, charismatic, sweet, and like really cares about connecting with people. And so a guy you really want to root for. So already an exciting piece. And that's the thing, right? Samuel French, who's a really good writer and a good follow on Twitter, another one of our Brooklyn Rays fans. Yeah. He had a really good thread about like synthesizing the idea of what these trades mean as a fan. And I think a lot of people talk about it from different perspectives, especially from a lot of people have opinions not as Rays fans about what Rays fans might feel. And people are going to have different feelings, but his point of view actually really matched mine a lot. And it was really cool he was talking about how like, it's not that he's desensitized to these trades. It's that he for his like entire adult life, the Rays have been winners. And like, that is something not to take like for granted. There are people Angels fans who have spent the last decade not winning a single playoff game.
And watched like the two greatest players ever on the same team at the same time.
Rise and fall from their team. Yeah. The Mariners have been to one playoff game, one postseason since 2001 or 2002. That this is not to be taken for granted, the success that they've had and the continued success that they've had. And it does come from not allowing windows to ever shut and knowing, and maybe sometimes prematurely, propping that window back open through some very tough trades. But a lot of the people that we are sad today that we no longer get to watch as Rays, we get to support in other teams, but we also would have never gotten to know them if we weren't for trades that sent away other guys that we cared about.
Austin Meadows was traded to get Isaac Paredes.
Chris Archer was traded to get
Matt Garza was traded to get Chris Archer. Like this
and
is the
Matt Garza Delman Young had to go to them. So we climbed all the way up the tree. That is the fact, right? Tyler Glasnow would have never been a beloved Ray if it wasn't for trading Chris Archer, another beloved Ray. We would not have known Isaac Paredes without the Meadows trade, and without the Isaac Paredes trade, we wouldn't know Christopher Morel. And I don't want to discount the emotions and feelings, but I do think we shouldn't discount the emotions and feelings that other people might have that when they are not as upset with this transition, that doesn't make them any less of a fan. That doesn't make them any less caring. It means that they love this baseball game. They want to see this team succeed. It doesn't mean that they give a shit about Stuart Sternberg's bottom line. It doesn't mean that they're trying to run interference for billionaire owners. It means that they want to see their team play meaningful games in September. They want to have a team that's interesting and fun. And if every single year, you have a team that is interesting and fun, that can compete, that is relevant in Major League Baseball, that is a gift that we should never, ever take for granted. And if you enjoy that, you are okay. It is okay to enjoy that and embrace that.
Yeah. Very well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that's where we'll leave you guys tonight. We're getting close to midnight here on the East Coast. It's been a long couple days for me moving and trying to keep up with all the trades across baseball. We'll get back to more of the on the field discussion, I'm sure, next week whenever we speak to you guys. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that notification bell so you can join us whenever we go live. Hopefully very soon, we're going to be back live on the D-Rays Bay X account. And we're also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, rating, review, best way to spread what we do to more and more Rays fans. If you really want to say thank you, patreon.com/Raise Your Voice, where you can become a member for as little as $1 a month. As always, make sure to head on over to draysbay.com to check out all of that great Rays coverage. Once again, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Wait 1 second. There we go. Almost hit the wrong button.